everybody, Captain Murphy here from PiratesAhoy.net. Today we're taking a look at how substance files can be used to modify an existing texture. So like an existing object such as a diffuse file that you've already got, and we'll say that you don't have a bump spec, or should say the bump spec or metallic, masking, things like that. And even if you're not greatest at Photoshop or you're not the greatest at certain programs, you can still get all the channels you want out of the Substance Designer. And doing this can actually save you space, which is what one of my biggest concerns for Hearts of Oak. And it's not so much, it's been brought up that, oh, well, terabyte drives are very cheap. We understand that terabyte drives are cheap. However, every time we deploy the game, we have to upload that to our server, and then our server then deploys it back out to all of our people that are wanting to play the game. So a single deployment with a game that is a couple gigabytes is, it's minor. It takes, like 4 days to upload the thing. And then if you have any kind of file corruption, you've got to pretty much start all over again, which is very harrowing on development teams trying to get things perfect. We don't have an in-house server. Everything we do is remote. All of our people are volunteers. So, uploading gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes takes a lot of time, and it increases the propensity for things to go wrong. So we want to minimize the file size on things to make sure that we don't have errors. It also helps in distribution of the game that we can have more channels to distribute the game to people by having a smaller file size. So I'm going to show you what can be done to an existing texture to make it more conducive to the game, and to kind of do things that normally you'd have to be an artist to understand. And believe me, I'm not a big artist type. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a single file. This is in my texture folder here. This is an existing diffuse. This is the ornament file for the HMS Sphinx. It's not the greatest, and there's a reason that all these black areas where they've used that to create the illusion of being 3 dimensions, that's going to bite me in the butt here in a minute, and I'm going to show you why. What we may want to do is lighten this to start to hopefully do things, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I'm going to show you is we've imported this base object into the Substance Designer. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this one file into multiple channels of output. I'm going to show you what I did. So to start, we took the base diffuse texture. We do a grayscale on it, and you can see where those blacks really start to become a problem there. And I've exposed the channel weights, being how it handles the that grayscale conversion. And I've exposed those channel weights to the base of the file. So you can see that on our input parameters, which are things that you're going to see inside Unity, we've actually exposed these channel weights here, so we can then modify them. So as we modify these channel weights, you'll see that we've got that output, okay? And so we can then modify how that file is handled. So we can increase or decrease certain channels, and that affects the end file dramatically. You can watch as the file itself, this change here modifies every chain down the row. So you're not having to make one single change and then apply it further down. This is all being done real time, so we can modify this one file, and then that one file modifies all the chain that are childed off of it. Alright, so then we can do this. We can modify certain parameters. Okay, and we can see that some have an effect, some don't. Like I said, the min-max apparently doesn't really have much of an effect here. Alright, so we're looking at this. We can modify these. Now these are just for what I'm looking at inside Substance Designer. We're going to see that these are actually handled inside of Unity as well, so we can get access to these. But we do a grayscale conversion, so we take it from being a colored image to being grayscale. I do a levels on it and make it, make the darks darker, make the whites whiter, And so that gets us a more dramatic image, a more drastic change to the image. So we can see that we're taking away some of the little specks in the background and kind of making them go away. And so this is what we're going to do is we split off at this point and we go to the different channels. So this one down here is a channel for our smoothness. This is how we're going to see the paint being smooth. This one up here is our normal, and what we do here is we do another levels on it to further increase the dramatic change. Then I blurred it out, so this takes the input, blurs it a little bit. Now you see that by blurring it we make the lights a little darker. If we do another levels on that, boom, we've taken away most of that. We blur it again, and then we go ahead and create a level of, or I should say, we do a levels conversion on it to make it into a bump map file. So we've got a pretty basic bump map coming out of it. This one here comes off and splits to this upper channel of an RGBA merge. And now in Unity we have the ability to use multiple channels, and with the basic what's called the standard shader in Unity 5, you've got the metallic. Metallic actually reads in two different parts of that channel. We've got the red and we've also got alpha. So what we do is we take our base coloration or our base file here, and we come into an RGBA merge, which then we say that this top part is RGB, this bottom part is alpha. So we then put just a black and white in the RGB, which then puts it into all three channels. We have an alpha, or this specular type map is going to be, or smoothness map is going to be turned into our alpha. And so when we get done, we have all four channels taken up by information, but we're only going to use the red and the alpha. But we've got, this is our metallic and smoothness. Now what I did on here is I also did a third one, is I made another one using the final output for normals, but I turned that into a black and white, and then we're outputting that as a mask, and I'll show you how that's used in a second. So this is taking a single output, a single diff file, and we're turning that into these technically 5 channels, these 5 outputs here, based across 4 different files. And so we'll jump into Unity and we'll take a look at how that actually works. And so you can see here is our ornamentation right here. It's being applied to a standard shader. This is the ornament is created in the SBSAR file. Now the SBSAR file that was outputted is only about 3.5, 3.6 megs. So we've already saved 7.5 megs just for one file output. If we didn't use any of the outputs, like if we didn't use any of the normals and all that, we would still be saving a pretty decent amount of space here. But what we're doing is we're going to see that we're creating these 4 channels here, or these 4 output files. And we've told it that this is our base file, this is our metallic, but we're telling it that smoothness is on the alpha. So we're telling Unity that this metallic file has smoothness on the alpha, and you can actually see if you look here, this shows that metallic R, smoothness A. That means that metallic is pulling from the red channel, and then alpha is coming with the smoothness on that channel. We've got our normal map, and we were controlling the normal map here in terms of how Unity handles what the map looks like. We've got a second control here called the normal strength that I've exposed, and this is being done from inside of the substance. So in here I've exposed the intensity of the normal as that relief alpha. So we're going to see that this is what we're looking at here. We've got the variables of normal strength is being done as our output. So when we expose that, we see that in Unity as normal strength. That means we're going to make changes to the actual file itself, not just how Unity sees it. We're going to make a change to the file. So the file itself has a change, and then we can modify how Unity sees that file. So we can make some slight tweaks here, so we can back this down so that way the normal file itself is a little less drastic, and then we can go ahead and up how Unity handles that slightly less drastic file. Okay, so there's different ways you can handle this. Now, that detail mask I created earlier, I'm going to show you how I'm using that. So I created this detail mask file, and that's this one here. I'm applying that to the detail mask inside of here, which is for our secondary maps. I then apply a normal map as a secondary map, and you can see here that I've got this really nice wood grain in the background, and that's because I've taken our original wood grain from one of our other maps, one of these other substances, and I've applied it in the background here, not inside the substance file, but just inside the Unity shader. So that gives me this wood grain texture as a background. The detail mask tells it not to apply that secondary mask to these objects that are in the mask. So we don't have that grain crossing over our nice shiny ornamentation here. If we took that mask off, you can see that all of a sudden now we've got all this wood grain crossing over our ornamentation, where in reality we don't want that. We don't want that wood grain to cross over it. So we applied a detail mask to the output, and that takes away that secondary mask having that that wood grain crossing over it. So that's just how we can use pretty much one variation. Now the one thing that's neat about this is because we have direct control of the files themselves, we can then modify how that is handled in the engine itself. So we're not having to go back into Photoshop and modify things. We can go, okay, well, let's change how the mids are being handled. You can see just a very slight variation here. We can modify how the highs are handled so that we can make it into either a more rough file, a rough wood versus a maybe a little more smooth wood. And so there's our mids right there. So we can make it kind of bleed out a little bit more, or we can increase or decrease the lows. And so each one of these channels is now exposed, so we can get to it inside Unity and see exactly how it looks like in Engine. So we can then make the gold look a little more gold colored with the specularity, or we can make it higher shininess and make it more metallic looking. So there's many ways we can do this, and because we've got this option inside Unity, we can see it immediately without having to go back into Substance Designer, modify it, and then back and forth. So anyway, this is just kind of a quick idea, taking substances another step, and this has saved us just in this one file. If we were to output all of these channels, those original 4 files, using all RGBA channels, we're looking at if the original file is 10 megs, then if we assume that every file will be around 10 megs as well, they could vary between 6 or 12. So if we just say that using a rough estimate that we had 4 outputs, each one with 10 megs, we're looking at 40 megs of output file. Well, that's down to 3.5. Now in memory we're still looking at 40 megs, but on disk we're only looking at maybe 3.5. So that saved us, we'll say, almost 35 megs, 36 megs on disk for one file, and we didn't have to have an artist sit here and play with this thing for hours and hours and hours. We could apply another version of this ornamentation using that same basic structure. We have another ornament file, and using this this same substance tree, we could then apply this and reuse this tree here and create another ornament file within a matter of minutes. So that saves us time, and especially with a volunteer organization, time is absolutely of the essence, and as much quality as we're trying to put out, we also need to find some shortcuts to help us. So hopefully this helped explain a little more about substance files and how they're used. Remember to go to piratesahoy.net to volunteer and to go to heartsofoakgame.com to stay up to date. Thanks.